Bilisan! Cover fire! Hey!
At first glance, these combat scenes are all too familiar. A deadly urban war where innocent civilians are undoubtedly being killed. But these aren't the streets of Syria or Iraq. It's much closer to home. This is the Philippines, and it's the frightening new battleground of the Islamic State.
ISIS has said, basically, now that it's difficult to get to Syria, wage war at home. That's the new mode of ISIS. It's a guerrilla strategy using components from outside the heartland of the Middle East.
It took 5 long months for the Philippines Armed Forces to get the upper hand here. But they didn't wipe out ISIS altogether. Just metres from the battleground, we come face to face with the disillusioned men still pledging their allegiance to ISIS.
But you took over the city. You were responsible for killing a lot of people.
That is to make the government afraid.
A new generation of fighters, angry young men in their 20s, fathers in their 50s, armed and ready to fight again.
So you and your friends are ready to strike.
Yeah.
Would you be happy to kill people like me?
Our main is we will kill the people who's gonna kill us. We're just doing what God told us to do.
The dense jungle of the southern Philippines has long been a breeding ground for local extremist groups. But what makes this battle different is the ability of ISIS to bring together disparate fighters under the one banner, all fighting for an exclusive Islamic State. 2 years ago, ISIS set its sights on Marawi City as its East Asia headquarters. Today, it lies in ruin. The bombed-out homes and shop fronts resembling the streets of Raqqa in Syria. It might not look like it, but these streets are still too dangerous for locals to return home. Hundreds of unexploded bombs are hidden beneath the rubble. Military checkpoints guard the entrance to what's left of this city.
This area is actually the central business district of Marawi City before the siege. But during the siege, this was also where the ISIS established their defensive position.
General Romeo Brawner was on the front lines of the battle here in Marawi City.
It would have made it very hard for you to, just looking around, to fight door to door.
It was really very difficult because, as you see, there are lots of open spaces.
More than 1,000 people were killed during the siege. Civilians, soldiers, and the enemy.
During the last days of the siege, the ISIS occupied most of these buildings, and so in order to drive them out, you had to drop bombs, to bombard these areas. That's why you'll notice that the buildings are like this.
So you sent in the planes big time.
Yes.
A lot of aerial bombardment.
Not a lot of bombardment. It had to be really precise.
Well, if this is precise, I'd hate to see it if it was just random.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, every building is just smashed.
Yeah.
on top of the Grand Mosque in the centre of town where ISIS had its logistics headquarters. And it's easy to see why, because from here it made it very easy to monitor the siege. Now it's even easier to see the scale of the destruction. This was the second time in 5 years that Islamic extremism has brought mass bloodshed to the southern Philippines, just 3 hours flight time from Darwin. In the hills, beyond this ruined city, many of the ISIS fighters are still at large, training new recruits in secret camps.
We've had some tastes of what can occur, and if we're not vigilant, it may occur again. People will be inspired to upset, and that's not going to change. We just need to be ready to make sure that we can counter it.
Just months after the siege ended, in November 2017, Australia quietly made steps
3.65 seconds.
to send its own troops into the jungles of the southern Philippines to train local forces.
It may not be on Australia, but this part of the world is in our backyard. It is our direct area of interest, and the people that we are helping now, they're our neighbours. Their prosperity, their peace is ours.
Group Captain John Young believes this operation is also making sure the threat of ISIS here never makes its way to Australian shores.
What do you make of their resolve to wipe out the threat of ISIS in the region?
They are intent on making sure that groups like ISIS don't hold their foothold and don't get back on top again. They want them gone.
It's the first time television cameras have been given access to this operation. More than 100 Australian troops from the Army, Air Force and Navy are on the ground here offering lessons they learnt in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Good, yeah. See that one in the... Good, yeah.
This open range has been set up to train local forces in urban close combat shooting. Skilled at fighting extremists in the jungle, the Philippines military were caught off guard when ISIS forced them to the streets of a major city.
Good, good shot. Good, very good. Good.
What's the idea behind it?
So to increase speed and accuracy.
Warrant Officer Ryan Young says this training is making the soldiers more confident in battle.
This allows them training and makes them faster in moving that rifle up, acquiring the target, releasing the rounds until the threat's gone.
So in something like a Marawi siege where you're in close combat between buildings and things like that, this is the sort of stuff you need?
Yeah, precisely.
Go, go, go. Mission accompli, sir!
It might look like a tropical tourist retreat, but the Sulu Sea off the coast of Zamboanga is popular with local extremist groups looking to make big bucks from kidnap for ransom. It's also the jumping off point for foreign fighters who want to train with local extremists on these lawless islands. Here, the Australian Navy patrol boat HMAS Childers is conducting a joint operation with the Philippines Navy.
Fire on deck!
Today, this Aussie crew are teaching the local forces how to board and assess the threat on board a vessel.
You just step up.
So I have a few questions for you.
Thank you again. Thank you. Lamet, have a good day.
It's a unique operating situation for you, isn't it, with these waterways?
Yeah, it's very intricate. You can see over there the main island, we've got Zamboanga, and then you come over here to dozens of smaller islands, all interconnected.
Alicia Rundy is the commanding officer of HMAS Childers. Accustomed to patrolling the vast coastlines of Australia, These busy waterways and porous borders are a change of pace for the Australian crew.
According to some of the intelligence, a few of these islands have still got foreign fighters on them. I mean, they're not benign, are they?
No, that's right. We spent some time with a Filipino gunboat last week, and he was explaining that whilst they look peaceful from the outside, while we're out here in beautiful conditions, what's happening over there is much more sinister and to be taken very seriously.
Stop it! Stop it! G3 conducting stoppage drill!
What you're doing here would also help our safety down the track.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Indonesia and Philippines and Papua New Guinea are our closest neighbours. It's in our best interest to work closely with their navies and build and strengthen those relationships.
Still to come, a call to arms.
How many do you think there are?
Easily 2,000.
2,000. ISIS preparing for war.
Where do you think they go from here?
I think bombing attacks.
The frightening threat from a hardline extremist.
If some people try to kill us, we must fight and try to kill them too.
That's next on 60 Minutes. On the edges of Marawi City in the southern Philippines, daily life has cautiously resumed. But you don't have to look too far to find the scars that ISIS has left behind. This building used to be a school for Christian students. Its walls are now covered in bullet holes and ISIS graffiti. I'm here to meet a young ISIS recruit that Filipino troops are training to eliminate.
How you going?
He doesn't want to show his face and has requested we call him Saddam.
Are you worried that you will be caught by the troops now?
Yes, I'm afraid.
Because you know you could be locked up for a very long time.
Yes.
3 years ago, when he was 21 years old, Saddam was lured to join ISIS.
They give us money, they give us guns, then every month they give us income.
They give you a wage.
Yes.
And that would be very attractive.
Yes.
So effectively, ISIS has given you a job.
Yes.
What is it about ISIS that you like?
ISIS is telling the God's order, and that's definitely what will make us go to paradise.
It's no longer just about money. Saddam now lives and breathes their sickening ideology. He says foreign extremists trained him and other men his age in warfare against non-believers.
Do you know many men, such as yourself, around here who also want to be part of ISIS?
Yes. I have many friends that also want to join or train in our group.
Many friends? Still here?
Yes, yes, still here.
Around and near Marawi?
Yes.
Saddam claims more than 100 young men who either escaped the battle or joined afterwards are now members of his group. They want Sharia law enforced in majority Muslim cities like Marawi.
So if you don't get Sharia law, you would be happy to fight again?
In my opinion, yes.
ISIS have made a lot of trouble in a lot of countries.
Yes.
Will they make trouble in Australia?
We don't know that. If some people try to kill us, we must fight and try to kill them too.
It's not just angry young men who have joined the fight. A growing number of middle-aged men, like 54-year-old Ked, also believe ISIS can offer a better life. Is there a lot of support? Are there a lot of people here who would fight again, like you?
Mas marami. Mas maraming lalaban.
There will even be more people who will join this fight if it happens.
How many do you think there are?
Ang may estimate ko lang mga...
Easily 2,000.
2,000? Just in this area? The real fear is that these fighters will now look to camps like this one to find even more recruits. More than 60,000 have been left homeless after the siege. Many have been pushed to these makeshift camps, a putrid place for any family to live temporarily, let alone years.
There are hundreds of young fighting-age men among these homeless families, all left to live in the squalor, without a future, without a job, and without much hope. Perfect targets to be turned and radicalised by the extremists.
I think everybody sees the failure to reconstruct Marawi as being a real danger point because it's fertile ground for recruitment and there is a lot of resentment. And there are many people who see the destruction of Marawi as coming more from the government airstrikes than from the activities of the extremists.
Sydney Jones is a leading expert on terrorism in Southeast Asia. Where do you think they go from here in terms of expressing their dissatisfaction?
I think bombing attacks. I think that's their best option, as it were.
After failing to take over Marawi City, ISIS has a deadly new strategy: suicide bombing attacks. It's a threat that Sydney Jones believes could easily make its way here to the Philippines' capital of Manila.
I think we have to be worried about the potential for a violent attack in Manila, partly because there's a history of attacks here. Nobody expects it, nobody's prepared for it, but there are always people that can infiltrate into the capital. And I'm surprised, frankly, that we haven't had an attack yet.
So you think there's more chance of bombs going off here in Manila now for the next round of attacks than there is back in Marawi?
I think there's a bigger chance of a bomb attack in Manila than there is of another takeover of a city.
Disturbingly, for young extremists like Saddam, it's a fight they are openly prepared for. So next time, you won't be fighting in your backyard.
Yes.
You'll find another target.
Yes.
Somewhere like Manila.
If that's what our leaders say, then we will be happy to do.
You'll be happy to do that. What about another country like Australia?
I don't know that.
Saddam isn't deterred by the presence of Australian troops in his region. Australians have been training the Philippine army to fight ISIS.
And we have foreign people, special forces that train us too. So if that happens, Allah will help us.
You're confident that you would put up a good fight?
Yes.
For General Romeo Brawner, the crumbling mass of Marawi City is a daily motivation to make sure ISIS never gains a foothold again in his patch.
So we're going into this building, and I'm going to show you one of the tunnels that they use to cross from this area under into this area.
Hopefully there's no unexploded ordnance here.
No, this was cleared earlier already by our EOD teams.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. So you have this hole that they dug. Most of the tunnels that they dug were done by their hostages. they forced their hostages to dig these tunnels here. So this tunnel, in particular, would cross into the street, under the street, and into the other building.
And lessons from the battle in Marawi have helped General Brawner's troops track down new terror training camps in the region.
Just a few months ago, you raided a camp where ISIS were training children.
That's right, yes.
It is frightening.
It is, because they start training the children at the ages of 9 and 10. And so even the youngest surrenderee that we had is 11 years old. And so he started training when he was 9.
It just goes to show, I mean, it shows you that they still have tentacles everywhere and they're still trying, they're still making a big effort.
They're still trying, They haven't abandoned their objective of creating a caliphate here in Southeast Asia.
We can see what happens around us when it gets out of control, so...
That's right,
Good luck in the fight.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Liam Bartlett. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.